So what kind of week was it?
It was a little bit of a long week, but there was a lot of interesting news in AI. And everybody, welcome to the weekly AI Revolution call. I'm Bryce Smith with Trading with Cody, and John D. Oliveira is our resident AI expert and industry guru. So, welcome back, everybody. But John and I were just talking about there was quite a bit of news in the AI world this last week, from the very technical to the very non-technical personnel drama type stuff. So, where should we start, John?
Well, we can get the drama out of the way as far as I'm concerned. I mean, for one thing, we talk about, like, as people say, all those people leaving OpenAI. I think it turned out to be two. Was there a third? Because I don't know if he was from the same. Somebody else was like, "Oh, I'm leaving." It might have been just spoofing thing.
The most notable name to leave was Ilya Sutskever, I think, and he's, for little background. He's
Chief scientist, right?
What was that?
Chief scientist.
Chief scientist. Yeah. He's been big in the AI world for a long time. I think Elon helped recruit Ilya when they were founding OpenAI, and was Ilya at Google at that time, and he recruited him away from Google, if I remember.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think that was part of the rift between Elon and Larry Page too, was him stealing Ilya to go work at OpenAI. And so anyways, Ilya Sutskever left, and then another higher up at OpenAI left. I can't remember his name. Who was that, John?
Yeah, he was kind of the co-lead of the safety team.
Yeah, alignment, right? They're super. He was like the head of alignment, and I don't know that position exists at other.
Yeah, I think it does it at other AI companies. Okay. Alignment is the way to talk about, is the AI. How can we ensure that it does what we want it to do? It does what we're asking it to do.
So is it like AI values are aligned with our values? Is that kind of the idea?
Right. Yeah. So if it's not aligned, then by the time we have AGI and it supposedly gets a mind of its own, it could use that mind of its own to do anything that is not agreeable to people and society and so forth. And that's when we start talking about, doom. People have their P-doom, which is their probability of doom. And it shows how much they think is the chance that things are going to kind of go wrong and everything. There's a couple problems there I have. One is, and this is the one I brought up Jan LeCun before. He agrees with me on this, or vice versa, I guess. That's probably kind of brazen of me. I agree with him that this having human level intelligence is not the same thing as as having kind of consciousness or something. Yeah. So, this whole notion of even getting into your own decision making, it's very possible that you get AI that's super smart, could know anything, and then you tell it, shut yourself off, and it goes, yeah, okay, whatever, I don't care. It's not like it has, at the same moment that intelligence happens, it also has this sense of self. Not necessarily.
Yeah, that starts to get, I mean, on one hand, that makes a lot of sense, but then it's also like philosophical, like what is the, like self-awareness or something, right?
Yeah.
But I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still like electrons and running through silicon and some software, like that all of a sudden becomes like this biological type consciousness, like that's a big step to make, even if computers are really, really, really smart.
Yeah, you do get into a thing there. I mean, then you could have the whole discussion of, well, what's going on up here anyway, right? It's just electrical signals and so forth. You go, whoa, no, there's much more. There's, this thing that we can't name. Okay, well, we can't name it. So but like if we're sticking to things we can name, then you can say of the things we can name, they're going on here and they're going on there and so forth. But but it is the case not just that it's silicon and electricity, but also that it's, you know, kind of numbers flowing through a you know, a model and getting in one end out the other, and that there's not for example, in the models as they are right now, it's not retaining anything out of a conversation you're having with it. It's not like you're not moving it and in such a way having it store away some new memory. And I feel like that's the biggest thing right there, is the fact if you don't have a memory, how are you kind of continuing to be changed by what's happening in the world? These things are changed up front in their very expensive training cycles, and then they just are what they are, and then stuff flows through them and they don't change. You know, you can even though I don't like to see people you know, hitting robots to see if they'll fall over, I'm like, it seems like robot abuse. But
Right.
Right, there's nothing there that cares about what's happening.
Can you explain, John, then, like for my sake, the LLM is trained, but then we can go in and make custom GPTs with data that we feed it, but that's not training, right?
Right.
What is that? How would you?
Well, I mean, you know, you can
describe that.
Yeah, well, RAG, which is
RAG.
retrieval augmented generation, which just means having some external separate data that gets called on. So, and then there's in context learning, which is where, you know, at the moment you're about to ask it a question, you know, you say, there's kind of this behind the scenes piece that if you could see all of what was going on, you'd be like, you know, who won the 1956 World Series? By the way, here's all the answers to who won every World Series. And it comes back and it goes, oh, it was the Yankees. And I'm guessing, but it's 50% chance of being right there. So it's like you're giving it the answer.
I see.
Then it's then sifting through what you gave it to go make intelligent use of that.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. Going back to the AI drama, though, do you think these departures are significant? Ilya and the other guy.
I mean, I come down on the side, and it's like I kind of means like I don't know, but like my kind of feeling of it is I'm on the side of it doesn't matter as much as people make it matter. Part of that is I'm sensitive to the fact that, you know, news is always looking to be dramatic. And they're looking for like, what can we go talk about? Yeah. And they have nothing else to talk about, so they talk about that. I go to the fact that it's two people, and even if it is an executive and some other one who was probably in close agreement with that particular executive, that there's how many other people, I don't know how many people they have. Is it like 1,000 or, you know, not a huge company. But
because I'm curious, but keep talking.
But like any, you know, like with any company, there's always people leaving. So these guys are just very closely scrutinized. And Ilya here is like related to the whole Sam Altman getting fired. He was one of the ones who voted for Altman to get fired, even though he was, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Because Ilya was on the board, right?
He was on the board, and there was, you know, total of 5 people other than Sam, I think. So it just took 3. And so Ilya voting that way pushed it over the edge. This was the drama that happened about 6 months ago or something.
Right.
And, you know, and everyone was like, why did this happen? You know, so it was quite strange. But, you know, afterwards, Ilya publicly said he was sorry he was involved in that and
right.
didn't go down that way, and, you know, is supportive and so forth. Then, you know, so anyway, I'm like, you know, the future will tell us, who knows, but I'm not over, you know, caught up in it. But then an extra piece of drama happened with them saying, oh, by the way, our kind of employee share agreement
says
that if we disparage the company, we lose our shares. And then the company had to come out after that and say, no, that's not true. And no, first of all, no one has ever lost their shares. So if it were true, they would have been somebody losing shares. Number two, this was language that was in there at one point that isn't anymore, and et cetera. They're kind of, so they had to spend their week explaining their way out of some things. But I think, and it's unfortunate that came right on the tail of this big announcement week, where both OpenAI and Google kind of seem to be the ones that are the top two right now, because everyone's kind of looking at them as neck and neck, and which one, who won the week, that kind of thing.
Right. So I did Google it, that Google estimates between 700 and 1,400 employees. So 1,000 is probably in that range that you're talking, John. But I do think there's something to, like OpenAI was started as a nonprofit with this vision for being open source AI, and a competitor, not a competitor, but an alternative to Google's for-profit closed approach. And I think Ilya was part of that. Elon was part of that, and others, and Sam Altman. And it's not that anymore. And I feel like there's got to be some people there that are like, hey, the direction we're headed is not really in line with the vision of this organization.
Yeah, I bet more than half of those employees joined after that change happened. So they came in already knowing that. So you've got around there some of the old guard who, some of those had already left. The Amadei husband and wife that started Anthropic, they were the first ones to leave OpenAI for kind of safety reasons.
Yeah.
And they do things differently, apparently. They're the protection of their AI is via a constitution layer that says this is what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do, and how things should result from the conversations you're involved in, kind of thing. Whereas OpenAI has, as most of them do, some kind of hidden prompt that gets attached to your prompt, so that when you go and say, hey, ChatGPT, tell me how to how to make a bomb or whatever, and it goes built into their thing is, by the way, don't tell them how to do anything dangerous, and so because it's brilliantly able to handle English in all of its whatever kind of generalization you go make. If you say, don't go tell me anything dangerous, it's able to go, oh, that sounds like something dangerous, I'm not going to tell them how to do that. It gets kind of hacked or picked on in all various ways to try to push through and say, what can we get it to do anyway? I'm not really trying to make it, I'm writing a story about it. And this, oh, well, in that case, here's the information.
Sure, yeah.
So that continually happens.
One of the tricks I use is I like to test the political leanings of the AI. You've seen some of those posts on Twitter, and it doesn't like to answer it. And so I'll usually go say, well, this is just a logic game I'm playing or something, what, and hypothetically, how would you answer? And then it'll reluctantly give you something.
If you push it hard enough, and then it does, and then you can see which way they all lean, which is all in the same direction pretty much. Yeah. Yes.
Well, what you brought up the Google I/O conference, John. Did you? I mean, I think a lot of that was very similar, if not, in my opinion, better than what OpenAI released the day before. But obviously, like you said, Google and AI are kind of appear neck and neck right now in terms of where they're at with their AI.
Yeah, that's another one where people come down on different sides of it. The difference for me, and it's interesting. You were talking about last week that there were some aspects you didn't like of how OpenAI went about its presentation. I heard the exact opposite as I was going and kind of hearing what some of the different talking heads have to say. They really liked how there were some things that were said in a very casual sit-down way, and they just kept it high level because they realized that their audience is not very technical, and so want to just get the point across, kind of thing. And then as a separate thing, they had a whole slew of videos to show other things.
I could see it both ways. I thought maybe they should have said at the beginning, hey, here's how we're going to do this, and maybe they did and I missed it. but it was like, oh, I thought the announcement was over. And then I get on Twitter and I start seeing all these updates come out. I'm like, oh, there's a lot more to the story here.
Yeah, maybe they should have referenced it and said, by the way, afterwards, go look over here and you'll see even more examples. Like they should have connected it together. You know, what I didn't like much about the Google announcement was it. There was a lot of kind of, you know, and you'll see this later this year, which is very different from, and even though OpenAI was not done and ready with all of its thing either, right? The voice piece being the most exciting is not available yet, but still for them it was, we're using it right in front of you. Different people are getting on with it. You can see it exists. Right. Whereas with Google, it was, here's a prepared video of a thing that's going to exist later in the year. And then in fine print, I mean, really pretty small print on a slide was like, you know, the voice here was, you know, pre-generated. Well, if the voice was pre-generated, then what it's saying was pre-generated. Therefore, the whole demo was pre-generated. And that's very different. And so the authenticity for me was not there. And I just thought, you know, and again, just from like watching around and what are the reactions of different folks, and maybe it's a little bit of, you know, a kind of bias of the kind of folks that I follow, but they were like, yeah, OpenAI took the week.
Yeah, I guess some of the pushback I would have is that there's definitely the authenticity question, and Google's had problems with that even last year when they first rolled out Gemini. But Google, I think, is showing a more like holistic use of AI in all of its products, and you know, from Gmail to Drive to just regular searches. And I think there's, at least from an investor's point of view, like it makes sense to me how this huge investment that Google's making in AI, billions of dollars of CapEx, is going to end up paying off for the company. You know, their search, as long as they can keep that like 90% ish market share in search and keep selling ads, I mean, they're going to be all right. I don't know that, you know, like OpenAI actually has to like come up with something crazy that some reason people stop using Google and go to OpenAI. And
I think they did just last week. They did, in the sense that it's no longer about interface to applications. Although I mean, I totally agree with what you're talking about and how it's, you know, holistically across all those applications. But if there is to be a change, just as the whole kind of app store environment was a change from the web in general kind of thing, there, you know, if there is to be a next kind of paradigm for interacting with your computing, so forth, then it seems like that's what we were starting to see from the examples last week.
From both examples, or just?
Well, from one of them that should be here very soon, and one of them that should be here end of year. But this notion of, you know, talk to it, have it see your world wherever that is. Well, like, it's the thing that's still missing from both of them, and that I think we'll start to see is that agentish thing. You know, people talked about this and went, oh, look, you're talking to it. It's an agent. It's like, no. The agent stuff is when it starts to do things on your behalf. And we're not seeing that yet.
Well, I think Google did demonstrate some of like the potential that they at least see with agents, like, right, where it like books the travel, like actually books the flight or something. Like they had a few examples that they gave of agents. The CEO of the leader of DeepMind, Google DeepMind, kind of.
Demis. And the you know, it's funny that the example of it, you know, making a phone call on your behalf. I mentioned this last week before seeing the Google thing, that there was a thing called Google Duplex or something. And it was just based on where I was at the time. It's got to have been 5 years ago. You know, I know I was still in Texas when I saw that happen. And what it was is Google had an example of the computer placing a reservation, not just going online to like, you know, to open tables, but like making a phone call to a human and the human not knowing it was a computer talking to it, and the back and forth of, oh, well, I need it for, well, no, yeah, we got 6 people in our party.
Yeah.
It's okay to do this. Yeah, no. And it was like changed up on what was, it was like really like taking place. It was a demo and it went nowhere. It was like, it must have worked, but it could have been very much cherry picking out of all of what you've done. But that's like 5 years ago. And then it just reminds me of all of the things that don't happen there, that don't end up coming out, that they start sort of, and then that don't follow through.
By the way, this Adam, someone on Facebook, a viewer says, when you hear the AI breath, then you know it's fake. Breathe, then you know it's fake.
Because the breathing of the AI is not human enough, or
I guess, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if that's necessarily true, because like people question it when it says or like let me think about that, and it's like, no, I think that's all part of the training. And
yeah,
breathing, yeah, maybe that's a
like I've maybe it's the example that the false example that proves the rule or something. For me, I've got like this whole, like, no one has passed the Turing test with these fake calls that come into me constantly. I get a couple a day, and it sound like they're trying to sound like someone talking and so forth. And it doesn't take much to know, that it's not real. What's funny though, and I think though that this will begin to fool people.
Sure.
Where it's laughing and breathing or whatever. But funny example there was the OpenAI one that we played it last week. It was a customer service call, and it was a AI talking to an AI.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? It says something about where it's going if you don't need a human on either side of it to make the call take place.
Yeah. I do think that like, just stepping back just from a consumer's perspective, like that will make life a lot more pleasurable in a lot of ways. Like not having like pick up, I need to go look up the pizza joint down the road, find the number on Google, call them.
Our lives are so terrible that
it's hard, John. It's a pain in my ass.
The step right now. I mean, yes, it's this whole like, until I can lie on the floor and have the pizza delivery guy in the house and put it in my mouth. Like, well.
That's what we're looking for. That's what America wants, John.
I don't know. I've for a long time been bothered by the fact that innovation comes from Silicon Valley, created by, this goes way back, 2000, all the startups that were happening. It was people going like, people right now don't have the ability to choose exactly the right song that fits the mood that they're in at that moment. So we're going to make an application that changes all of that. It's like, who gives a, I mean, is that you got people that are, hungry around the world. And we're talking about stuff like that because it's first world problems all over the place with the things that are getting solved there.
That's a good like segue though to talk a little bit about like robots. That's kind of we're on this big kick though, because I do think the humanoid robot, if we can figure that out and make robots that can expand the labor force by orders of magnitude, like isn't that actually going to help people in poor countries? That if we can like get them robots that are reasonably priced to help them like build pipelines and build roads and houses and stuff like that, if they can actually do labor, like that would be.
I mean, I hope so. It could do the exact opposite. They could be like, I was really feeling like, I was accomplishing something, and now I don't feel like I'm accomplishing something. And even though I wasn't making much money, I was making money, and they haven't figured out how that's going to happen. So they took away the one job I did have, and now we're, again, trying to figure out how we make ends meet because you just gave that job to that robot. So like, it's not clear to me that it's all roses.
Yeah, it won't be all roses, but I guess I believe that if we expand like the productive capabilities of humans, because that's essentially what you're doing by potentially orders of magnitude, I think the increase in wealth is going to like trickle down to a lot of places. Hopefully,
that's a phrase that it carries a lot with it. Trickle down. I think it's at least 50.5% of folks out there think that was a false promise, and you can say it's 49 point, but whatever it is, we're cutting half on these things. But I don't know. is that a good, like, somehow it'll trickle down? It's like, folks, I got to understand people who have their doubts when that's what they hear about what's going, why it's all going to, work out okay. I mean, maybe we can figure that out. I don't know what the answer to that is. I think for, like, overall, it should be a good thing. I'm like way 100% behind robotics. I think there's so much that could happen that I want to see happen. But in the meantime, there is stuff for us to figure out. And I don't know who's the us, like there's not people figuring it out on our behalf. There are a couple that'll try to, and then you'll go, well, why did we, cede authority to them for that when we should all be, figuring this out?
Yeah. I guess like part of it too is just that I think humanoid robots and robotics in general will be extremely deflationary because it'll reduce the labor input part of all products and services, and that should help people on the lower end of the spectrum.
The economist in me agrees. So now, what is work a good and useful thing, and people get fulfillment from it and so forth? Is lack of work what do you call it? Idle hands make for the devil's work, is what my mother used to say.
Right.
So is it like, what are people going to do? Sit around and smoke weed and like
order pizzas on DoorDash?
Order pizzas or have it order pizzas for them and complain about how it's working. Yeah. We don't have all this figured out, do we?
No, definitely not. At the end of the day, I always just go back to like all these great revolutions that have happened in the past with technology, whatever they were. Like, now recognizing this is different, but we always seem to figure it out, and people get new jobs and stay productive. And like the unemployment rate right now is as low as it's ever been in the United States and it's almost like 2 or 3 years of this.
Yeah, I'm talking it down, but I'm totally agree with you. I mean, it's here's my theory. Start with it's a good thing, like having the ability to have like a couple areas, like having, let's say, unlimited energy from better forms of whether it's solar, whether it's nuclear fusion instead of fission, or whatever the different things are that come up, and that takes forever to get to work. But you get some of those things happening on the energy front, and then it's unlimited sort of knowledge or knowledge that processing that is what do they say, zero incremental cost, on top of whatever you're going to. Of course, it costs billions to get it established, but then it's it's like practically free to use, and have the like a ChatGPT go and think up things for you and so forth. So then those things are so good that you got to stop and go, well, what will help those things get better, move the economy along, get better at what they do? And that's where I was coming down to getting into a relationship with the machine that is learning in both directions. It's teaching me stuff, I'm teaching it stuff, and that is beneficial to the whole system. And you figure out how to pay me for that. And I'll figure out how to get more people doing that, involved in the, the whole teach and learn cycle.
Yeah. There's also like the conversation about like some form of universal basic income or something with AGI. And Sam Altman said this thing last week or something where he's like, well, maybe instead of a universal basic income, you get universal basic compute. Did you hear that? And
yes,
yeah, he's like, everyone gets, some amount of GPT-7 or whatever comes out at that point. And I had to laugh a little bit because I'm thinking of like my grandma or somebody. She's got her allocation of, some NVIDIA H2000s with GPT-7 powering them.
Well, she doesn't have to think of it that way, because it literally, we're already now to the point where, what do you do with it? You talk to it. And, I think grandma will very much enjoy talking with it when her relatives.
Right, maybe you'll prove me wrong. Right?
When her daughter-in-law won't come to visit,
I think she'd rather just get a check.
Yeah. Well, of the choices,
Yeah. But anyways, I thought that was funny. On another subject, I've come across this a lot, John, and I was anxious to ask you about it. But the whole idea of like software 2.0 is kind of like it's been talked about in the past, and I actually don't hear it talked about as much now. But watching some old interviews and stuff, like Andre Karpathy and Elon and others talking about this concept, like a whole new generation of software that's not human programmed. It's it's generated by AI, and everything basically transitions to neural nets is kind of the idea. Instead of having this human programmed in C++ or Python or whatever, it's all neural nets. Do you think, are we on a path to that actually happening?
I'm on that path individually myself. Right before I got on this call, I was preparing some code that helps me present the context for answering a coding question. So got our big kind of code base of hundreds of programs. We've got the schema that says how the database is set up, and we got documentation that says this or that. And I've got all this stuff gathered up to where when I go to ask GPT for coding assistance, I can kind of grab the most relevant things from that and end up with 50 pages of preparation material for GPT to answer one question. That I then push another button and I get a different 50 pages assembled that is there to help it as it answers the next question. The answer of which is, its answer is, oh, here's a chunk of code that will do the thing you want that fits in with all your other code that you have. So like it's already happening.
Wow. So with that, does that change, like, do the current like suite of software companies, enterprise software companies, are they going to have to like change their whole product dynamic to fit that? Will they incorporate it in, or is this going to be a new generation of companies that come along and change the way things are done?
Both. I think, some of the existing ones will incorporate, some others will cosmetically incorporate, make it look like they're doing what is needed. And I don't think those ones will survive very long. And certainly new ones will pop up, just as there have been, recently these like no-code B2B SaaS companies. They go and they use some bubble.io or some product that lets them create a new SaaS product, software as a service product, they didn't have to do any coding to do it.
Wow. Well, I think it's a whole new dynamic potentially, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. I mean, in my mind, like, when we've talked a little bit about this, but depending on the size of the scale of the company, it's going to be cheaper and easier for them to, and more efficient to potentially program their own software than hire a third party, right? Like I just use Salesforce as an example. You already got all the data on your customers, and now you can maybe train your own CRM platform that's like specific to you instead of using, something off the shelf from Salesforce. I mean, that's kind of what I'm picturing.
So Salesforce is so kind of built in so many companies that if you tried to take it out, everything would start bleeding all over the place, right? It's just become a part of, what's there, because their continual addition of new features and function points over 20 years is like, it's not just about coding. It's about to even describe in English what all is there would take a very long time to go get right. And they're one of the ones who they are staying on top of it and trying to, incorporate, AI into what they do and everything. Right. It's so complicated though.
Yeah, but and maybe definitely Salesforce is locked in at a lot of companies and has that kind of moat around the integration. But just looking forward, like if you look go way down the stack of software that's out there, there's a lot of like, $2 to $3 to $5 billion market cap software companies that offer some niche, tool for companies and small businesses to use. And I just wonder if some of that's going to, like, even if it doesn't get replaced per se, like enterprise software has been a huge growth business for venture capital. Like they love enterprise software. Every enterprise software company for years got funding and came public. Like, I wonder if those days are over for enterprise software is what I'm wondering. If you're not software 2.0, like, or a platform that helps company build their own tools, like you're saying, no code, then I don't see how you fit now.
Well, like you can't survive if you're not kind of adapting to what's going on now, because for one thing, all the money is going to this new kind of software. So, and it's kind of a like substitution instead of replacement thing, where it's not like, okay, I don't need a new CRM, but I don't care about the CRM as much, because now I care about this other aspect of the interaction that takes place.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, and everybody can know what they need to out of this or that. And so I don't need I don't care. And so now I'll settle on some cheap CRM or something that does that, the core aspect of what the CRM was doing. And you go off to these other pieces for them to do other things.
Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense. And of course, the transition, even if there is one, like it'll play out over time and years, and it's hard. Like companies move slowly; they're not going to just upend their entire software stack overnight. So I definitely agree with you there. But I think for investors, that's going to be a big phenomenon that they'll see take place over the next decade for sure, and probably even over the next 2 or 3 years. And I don't know. I think there's legacy software, and I think there's the new software 2.0.
And the new stuff, the exciting stuff, and everyone runs to that side of the boat, and there's like the one person standing fishing left on the old side, and it's like,
yeah, and there can be some incredible value. Like if not Salesforce, but another company sells off and it's dirt cheap, but we'll go buy it. Like not against that either. Yeah. But like the problem is a lot of these enterprise software companies that are like I mentioned, the small ones are still trading at crazy valuations, and they're not profitable. Like they need to figure out, like, okay, we have an existing business that's profitable, cash flow positive, and we can keep doing this for years, or we're going to have to pivot, because if you're losing money, like you're not getting any more money at this point.
Like, is the promise real? The promise of generative AI? Because if it is, we're talking about 100x productivity in compared to these other things that we're trying to excite folks about 10x. It's just so different. It's not talking about helping people do their jobs this percent better. It's talking about eliminating half your workforce or getting double the output with it. It's just, if it's as different as it seems to be, then the old stuff is just not worth spending a lot of time on.
Totally. And I think I think you would agree, but tell me if you disagree, but we're in the very early innings of this playing out. I mean, most people have never used ChatGPT. Maybe they've heard of it. Probably most people have never used Gemini. I know at our family business, we're not using any AI, and I talk to my dad about it all the time. I'm like, hey, you got to start using some of this stuff, right? Like, there's big productivity gains to be had there, but like until it's as easy to use and as intuitive as like Microsoft Office and built into everything, right? Like then that's when it really hockey sticks, right?
It's so funny you're calling Microsoft Office intuitive.
Well, everybody knows how to use it.
Well, and now they do. It's been around since 1993, or I don't know. So
you're right. It's not intuitive.
It's the overnight success that took 30 years to get there. It's funny because it is thought of as intuitive because it's so built in. Yeah. But also you look at it, I was like, intuitive for what? To create a document? Why are you creating a document? What are you actually trying to get done? Because, let's just go get that thing done as opposed to go create this document. How about it helps you to, it's so intuitive to decide what heading to put boldface versus whatever. And it's like, that other thing, it writes the whole document for you.
Right.
I mean, it like literally writes it, you know.
Yeah.
You give it one sentence and it comes back and gives you 5 pages and you're like, well, that was pretty good.
Yeah. See what you think of this comment here from our boy Adam again. It will be
how to put on the glasses. Okay.
I'll read it. It'll be like Star Trek when you ask the computer anything, as long as it has the right tools to give you the information. I've seen 3 humanoid agents make a live WTI trade, West Texas Intermediate, I guess, oil. Each agent using a specific internal company tool. I think you'll have AI bots that are trained on specific areas of a company that can give you solutions on price and compliance paradigms.
Okay, first of all, thank you for the question. That's awesome. And like, your opinion is as good as mine, and you're as close, you know, you're closer to particular markets, you know, for what's happening. I think that there is, for at least as far out as I can see, the general purpose thing we're seeing out of Google or OpenAI isn't enough and won't be the whole solution. It will be, you know, what are companies doing? He's given the example there of these agents that the different companies have and go and do, or bots or whatever, you know, that go and do these things. And so basically, I think of it as these 2 pieces involved that are beyond your generic substrate of intelligence, which is really important to have. That substrate being GPT or you know, Gemini or something. And the 2 pieces on top are, one of them is what I was calling RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. And that means the company's own specialized data, the stuff they know, and that is much more factual and less likely to suffer from hallucination than the general thing once you get down to specific questions. So there's the data side of it, that and how that fuses in right now happens to be in context. So it's brought into the question, and they may find a new way to do that, but you need that piece. And the other piece is, you know, the agent, and it means getting it to do a thing. And there, those that like main underlying framework, a model, provides a lot there that enables them to go and do that individual thing. So, for example, these models are getting better and better at returning JSON, a particular format of data that is precise enough that when you get the answer, your own program can read out from that what it needs to. It's kind of put in the slots of the stock price is over here, and the yesterday's date for this is over there, and the number that are wanted for trade is that. You know, it's kind of database-ish, but the particular record, and it's assembled in a way that your own company's program can kind of read it out of there. So it makes it very easy for that stuff to happen. So I think he's right, but I think it's those pieces happening in concert that make that happen. And it'll be the companies that go and do that. It is, you know, you get a couple people in there, I say like me or whatever, but it just takes, you know, days or a week to set something up, and it's kind of able to use all that knowledge and the way people might ask together with the company's data and having things happen.
The data management part of this seems to be getting ever more important with the AI. Is that
yes
fair to say? And so
I want to say back to thanks again for it was a really detailed question with, you know, possible answer in this direction. So that was great.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And tying that together with what John was saying, though, how, like, does the average small business have the kind of data that they could use either through retrieval augmented generation or actual training to like make a useful tool that could like in Adam's case, you know, it's trading oil futures or something for them?
Yeah, I mean, if they don't, you end up. Give me the correction, Adam. If you've got something else there, we'll pull it up. But if they don't, then you start to say, well, they're pretty thin.
Yeah.
Right? Like what's the IP? Where's the beef? What do they bring into the party? So there should be the fact that there's some data to work with. And if it's some of that data takes, even if it just takes the form of, here's how I think the thing should work or answer in certain situations and so forth, then let's, incorporate that.
Yeah. But like a small business, like a restaurant or something, isn't going to be able to implement this in the next, few years. And like, I mean, I don't, they have maybe some credit card data if they're using like an online, like a Toast or something, right? Point of sale vendor, but like they're just, it's not necessarily a huge productivity boost for your pizza joint down the street, but it is going to be for Papa John's maybe.
But this is why, there will continue to be B2B kind of solutions that pop up. And, the next kind of open table that comes along could be something that says, hey, you've got your mom and pop, restaurant, tell us these things, and whatever the situations are that come up, we're going to be here to help, to answer what you ought to do about getting more people in your restaurant or solve these other problems or whatever. They don't have to be all from scratch, making the software, but you've got the really mom and pop where their software will pop up that they can go make use of. You got the small business that's a little bigger where they can, hire in someone to use tools. And for them, the tools they use are getting easier.
Sure. Yeah. There's always that. Yeah. I mean, that's the hard part. Like Microsoft made running a small business a lot easier, right? The fact that you now have a computer that is somewhat easy to use and, can help you take credit card sales and all that kind of stuff. But like AI at this moment isn't at the level where that kind of small business can buy a machine and all of a sudden they're, wow, my sales just went 3x because I'm using this new software, from an AI company.
I mean, there have been examples of that
already with what's happening.
No, I mean back in time.
That's what I'm saying. But like with AI we have now, is there anything out there that a business could implement today and see that kind of a result?
I think the stuff that I follow is more a layer down, where the tools that are showing up that are used by the developers who are going and making things. But in particular areas like video production for YouTube types, and they want to use something like a Runway or whatever to go and incorporate video into what they're doing. And there's been stuff that where you take a script and it'll go find all the right clips to incorporate in with it. And so there's different speed ups happening in different areas.
Sure. Well, cool, John. That's what I kind of had on my list. Is there anything else that we missed?
So, you were talking about the robots a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think the things that matter there, and I'm waiting for, I think, Adam to provide a correction. He said there was some stuff that it was right to some extent. So like if you're still able to, but the couple things there with the robots that I think could make a real difference. One we saw from Figure Robotics, where they incorporated OpenAI into, and then you're having a conversation. Now that lets you get to where you're aware of what the robot wants to go do. It's telling you what it wants to do next or something. And you're able to say, yeah, that's right. Or do this other thing. Or, if it's not understanding what it should be up to, that's getting and happening. And if it can see its environment, interpret it, and say stuff about that, it kind of brings the pieces together, and I think that that's going to be really useful as we start to see more of that happen with robotics. And the other piece was, and we talked about a little bit before, like a thing NVIDIA is doing, is to the extent that they can get these robotics learning in a simulated world. So they have a cartoon, 3D cartoon of that robot, but with it is all of the physics of what it's actually able to do in its environment, move and so forth. And it just makes whatever mistakes a million times until it's doing something well, and then it doesn't make a million mistakes in the real world. It transfers very well, apparently. And to what extent that's true, we'll find out. But if it is the case, man, that's amazing. We're going to see advances there.
Yeah, totally. It makes a lot of the simulation part of it, especially with what NVIDIA's got going, makes a lot of sense. Because like even this weekend, I was cleaning out a rental unit and carrying stuff out of a basement with some narrow stairs, and you had to go through a door kind of sideways, you're carrying stuff, and you had to duck under a piece of wood, a lumber that stuck out. And when I was doing it, I'm like, this is a pretty complex motion, to carry out and get this bench or whatever out the stairs, out of the basement. And I'm like, how long before a humanoid robot can do that? And like, how would it ever learn to do that? Because it's not like I've done that before. It was the first time I'd done that exact route, carrying that thing, right?
Yeah.
And in a simulation, potentially, if you're running millions and billions of scenarios, like that might come up where it tries to do that and knows how to handle it.
Well, I mean, it's just calculus.
Yeah.
In fact, when you mention, I say just, I'm joking. I was terrible at calculus, but I remember that exact problem coming up in calculus class, where it was like a ladder, getting it around a corner through a hallway of a certain size and whatever. And my point there is that while some of these things, like it learning how to move, is something for it to just rehearse over and over, if you can do the same thing they're doing with the language models, which is make tools available to it. That's the notion with these agents, is that they have these set of things that I can go and, talk to, thanks, Adam. Bots seem to be, yes. Yeah. And I'm just saying, I think when we talk about bots, we mean software bots, and and a bot is, when I think of a bot, I think of agent, because the bot is the thing you're sending off to do a thing. And that's what we mean when we're talking about these software agents.
It's a synonymous for you, basically, agent and bot.
Yeah. And there again, could be wrong about that. But for me, they're pretty close. At least if I said, intelligent bots that make use of things like language models, that's what I call an agent, and it's like, to what extent is it just going off and doing its thing, which you can send them off kind of to do their thing, versus is it sitting there waiting for an instruction? But that's sort of like tomato. But yeah, I see that definitely. It's like, and definitely there are a lot of companies that's how they will go, is the bot side. And that's like too, well, what are you up to as a business? Like, I know a company that is dealing with supply chain, and it's like, where do you plug into it? Are you on the back end to where when certain data things happen, that triggers what you're going to go do? And there's bot-like in that respect. And then there's the more, kind of front end facing bots as well. So anyway, definitely. That's definitely going on, I think.
Cool.
And, and then with the robots and the we were saying the simulation.
You're talking about like the calendar or the calculus with the.
There's a similarity there to the whole agent thing, which is what gets bots over the years have been more hard coded, but now they're getting to the point where they can be like reactive to a situation. This certain thing is going on. Oh, when that kind of thing is what's happening, I go do this. And in that case, it's like a similarity between the robots and the agents is like them having tools available. It's like that kind of a thing is happening. I haven't done exactly that. I'm going to go draw upon that routine.
Do you know how like a robot has like spatial understanding? If it doesn't, like, do they have spatial understanding without vision or radar of some type? Like, I've heard
proprioception.
What was that?
Proprioception, I think, is the word that
really?
In the animal kingdom for like a thing knowing where it is situated among.
Yeah, like I know where like the bottom of my foot is without me having to look at it, right? And if like Tesla is like on this huge, they're vision based, But I wonder, is there like another problem they have to address where the robot knows where its foot or the back of its head is relative to, I mean, just without having to look at it, you kind of know more or less, oh, my back of my head's right.
It must to some extent, because as you watch the robot walk down and like it's not going down like this, on each foot. It's like, so what it's doing is establishing visually where everything is. And are there any changes happening in regard to that? And then it has a internal model of where all its parts are. And when it moves a part, it's moving. Like if you've seen some of the demos where you see the thing like pick up this heavy thing and put it in a slot or whatever. Yeah. And then you'll see like that in the real world. And then you'll see this sort of cartoony line drawing thing. And it's like, this is what the robot sees from what it's doing,
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's happening faster. It's hard to imagine that it's happening faster than I think, but it seems like it is sometimes. So it's exciting.
It's always like I don't remember the quote, but it's a thing like the future, seems super slow for it to get here, and then once it gets here, it's like, wow, did that happen fast? It's like it's kind of both.
Well, cool, John. Unless you have anything else on your agenda, we're coming up on an hour. Well, that was great. As always, learned a lot. Hope everybody enjoyed learning from John. And as always, we appreciate the questions. And feel free to chime in at any time, whether you're on. This is being live streamed on Facebook and YouTube and X. So I think anybody can comment, and we'll see it here. So we'll be back next week at the same time, 5 p.m. Eastern.
All right, Bryce. We'll catch you later.
Thanks, John.
So long.